All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're tuning in from. Thank you so much for joining us virtually today. My name is Hayla Alawi, and on behalf of Atmosphere Press, I am so pleased to welcome you to today's poetry reading. We'll be hearing from Rebecca Jane, who will be reading from She Bleeds Sestinas, released August 22nd, and William Guest reading from Pith, released December 10th. Both authors' books can be purchased from online retailers and from select bookstores. And of course, the books can be ordered on Atmosphere Press's website. All you have to do is visit atmospherepress.com/books. And then I'll also put some links for you in the chat here. Just 1 second. There you go. So at the end of today's event, we will have time for audience questions. So during the readings, if you think of a question for one or both of our authors, go ahead and type that in the chat and I'll make sure it gets asked. And then during the actual reading itself, please be sure to stay muted just so we can keep extraneous sound at a minimum. Of course, you can always feel free to use the chat for any praise and comments. And one last note before we officially start with our first reader, we at Atmosphere Press appreciate your support today and always. If you have a manuscript of your own, we would love to read it, so submit your work today to books@atmospherepress.com. Again, thank you so much for tuning in and supporting Rebecca and Bill. We're going to start off with our first reader, who is Rebecca Jane. Rebecca has been practicing, studying, and teaching various traditions of yoga since 1993. She has an MA in East Asian Languages and Cultures from Columbia University. Her work has appeared in a variety of online platforms and in print. She writes for Feathered Quill and Earshot Jazz and is an instructor at San Diego Writers, Inc., and also plays many musical instruments, including the hang drum. Rebecca is mother to 2 daughters. In She Bleeds Sestinas, we'll follow characters from realms of the fantastic, sacred, ethereal, and realistic. It's an imaginative journey exploring the intersection of spirituality and art, combining poetry and yoga to create a powerful tool for personal transformation. And now we'll hear more from Rebecca herself.
Thank you so much, Hayla. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you all for being here. I'm just taking in your names on the screen and seeing you. I'm just so grateful that you're spending some time with us today to hear some poetry. I'm going to set a timer. So before I begin, I would just like to pause for just a minute and connect with each other through a breath, just closing the eyes if it feels comfortable for you, or feel invited to just sit and be for just 1 minute of silence or breath awareness. Okay, so thank you for pausing with me for that moment. I'm just going to share with you a little bit about my, first, some positionality. Yes, my name is Rebecca. I do use the pronouns she, he, or they. I reside on unceded territory that is the Kumeyaay Nation. They're the sovereign stewards of this land. It's also known as San Diego, California. And I identify as a neuroqueer yogi or yogini. I am grateful for this opportunity to share this poetic journey. This collection, She Bleeds Sestinas, arose out of a deep wound and grief that happened due to the fact that I was practicing with a lot of sincerity, Kundalini yoga as taught by Yogi Bhajan. And then it was revealed that Yogi Bhajan was a criminal and financial criminal, a sex criminal of all kinds of shades. And it was really just, I was grief stricken. So I had a beautiful practice that I did every morning that included lots of chanting and asana or kriya, movement, relaxation, a whole hour of mantras. And it was such a beautiful practice. But after it happened that I realized this guru was a fraud, what was I going to do with my morning practice? So I really had to push everything aside and regain trust in teachers and regain trust in any kind of spiritual path. And really the spiritual journey, or I'd like to just call it a contemplative journey, is about self-discovery for me. So what I did was, I practice Surya Namaskar, Chandra Namaskar, Shiva Namaskar every morning, then did a relaxation, then did a kind of breath work practice. And I would just close my eyes and be in meditation until 6 words would come into my head. I would invite these 6 words to come into my head, and they became the teleotons of the sestina. So sestina is it originated in Italy, but it was a French form of poetry that uses these 6 stanzas where you use 6 teleotons or end words throughout the poem in different order. And the order is often visualized as a spiral. And this really drew me in because in yoga practice, especially when you get into deeper sort of visualization and meditative practices, you'll use a lot of like the Sri Yantra, like a sacred geometry that would be a tool for meditation. And often you see iconography of chakra systems or different systems in the body where the body becomes this kind of sacred geometry. And also the idea of the Kundalini energy rising up the spine. It's this kind of subtle energy that goes up the spine in a very fast spiral. And when you're mastering the body so much every day, you can start feeling this Kundalini, like the way it moves in the body reminded me of this kind of sestina movement. It's like a spiral. So all of this is to say that I had a very profound experience of, creating my own sadhana that turned into teaching. It taught me something. It led me to something, which were these Tibetan yogis who are able to achieve the rainbow body at the end of their life, which is, it's a very esoteric kind of achievement that you dissolve the physical body into the 5 elements. So it demands a really, deep control of the body, like a mastery of the body. And there are very few who are able to achieve this. So you've heard of like Jesus Christ. There's a book that's called Rainbow Body and the Resurrection by Francis Tiso, a Jesuit scholar who went to Nepal and Tibet to study the Khenpo Acho. He was a Tibetan master who in 1999 achieved the rainbow body, which is when he died, he was able to dissolve his body into the elements. And there's witnesses who saw, maybe his robe or his hair or some little elements are left behind to indicate that he had a body, he had a physical body, but he was able to dissolve it into the elements. So this She Bleeds Sestinas practice guided me to these teachers. And now I'm like reading up on all of it and learning about the rainbow body, how to achieve it. So I'm just going to read you this poem called The Poet Who Longed to Achieve a Rainbow Body. And the 6 words that I'm using as the teleotons are spring, bleed, cauldron, reborn, mantra, and hum. These 6 words, you'll hear them repeated. And all right, I'll just start reading. Once, mist burned off the canyon in spring. A poet's moon cycle had turned crone. What once would bleed transformed into skillful spinning the insides of cauldrons. Folks beyond these hills came to be reborn. She hugged them and whispered the mist mantras, dousing them in sound waves, rhythm, and hum. She wore a cloth of fine gold dissolved in hum, knowing her real body was spirit's eternal spring. She practiced Bompo Dzogchen mudras and mantras, longing to turn rainbow wherever she'd bleed. Many came to hum and rock with her. Many were reborn, trying to dissolve into a rainbow. She fell into a cauldron. Not achieving her goal, she kicked the cauldron. Why couldn't she hide in the swan dragon's hum? Because her community needed her to guide them, reborn. She touched foreheads, healed the wounded at the spring. Birds gathered in her namelessness so their bodies wouldn't bleed. Dark retreat and 100,000 inward repetitions of the miracle mantra. Yet she wondered because although she practiced the mantra, she hadn't become a rainbow. Prayer wheels spun inside cauldrons. North wind transmitted menopause. You're too old to bleed. So she wrote a novel in verse, tangled in ecstatic hum. New flowers grew from her body's soil. Flesh sent forever spring. Visualize, then become the fall of snow in summer. Be reborn. When winter arrived early and wildfire rocked the rebirth, our poet did all she could. Forests of children, dead, gun, mantras. This time, the community would never see spring. Storm cycles changed rotation. The sea was a cauldron. Earth forgot her axis. Polar ice caps ceased their eternal hum. The last humans to die chose laughter over blood. Om Mani Padme Hum, whirring in her veins, illuminating her blood. Since the beginning of time, accompanying every birth and rebirth, Dakini's warm breath inspired the mists to cheer up and hum. And instead of making people bleed, gunmen moaned mantras. Dear, she cut through the mind. A sestina is a cauldron. Poet, you may not become a rainbow, but you will conjure spring. Alas, the poet passed away that spring, longing for a rainbow body, but bleeding sestinas, creating cauldrons for creatures to dive in and be reborn, transmute boiling herb to paranormal blood, swirl mantras with poems to invoke the gods of the deathless hum. So thank you for listening to that poem. I just have a few more minutes to explain that every poem in this collection connects to each other somehow. The poems tell a story of a ghostwriter. Her name is Astarte Netherscribe, and she transmigrates. She has written 3 different stories or memoirs or about 3 different characters. Thalia the Elegant, she's kind of a circus wonder who can grow cannabis out of her yoni. That's Thalia the Elegant. And then there's Beatty, and she is this adept at breath work who was able to escape from a prison in China um, she was in prison for doing counter-revolutionary breath work, and she was able to fake her own death and snuck out of prison. She's like amazing. And that's Beatty. And then there's Gwillian Willow, who's a very strange being who can transform into a swan dragon. So he works in like a biolab, or I should say they work in a biolab, but they're able to, like, every time the moon is full, transform into a swan dragon. So Astarte Netherscribe wrote stories about these 3 characters, and they all show up as characters who have a group of sestinas dedicated to them. I, if you don't have the collection yet, I hope you will purchase it and read it and leave reviews on Amazon or wherever. And I really appreciate this time we spent together today. I'm really excited to hear William's poems, and I thank you again for being here. And I welcome any questions when we get to that part. And thank you, Hala. Back over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. I just have to say the context that you gave behind the genesis of the collection before you even started reading, it just created so much more depth during the actual listening process and the reading of the poems. So thank you so much for that and for your reading. Reading next today is William Guest, and he is joined by his wife, Jane. Bill is a graduate of Yale and Harvard Law School. He's also a sculptor in addition to being a poet. His books include a travel journal, Places You Want to Go, a 76-page essay in verse, Who Are We? Man and Cosmology, as well as 3 other books of lyric poems, What I Cannot Abandon, Time Do Not Stop, and Out of the Dark. And I think there's actually a 4th collection not mentioned. So there's this collection we'll be hearing from today is the 5th book of lyric poems by William Guest. So you can see more about Bill at www.williamguest.com. But before that, I just want to tell you a little bit more about Pith, the book we'll be hearing from today. It delves into a wide array of themes and styles, offering vignettes of rich and joyful moments. These poems explore experiences with family, the passage of time, and the mysteries of life and death. And with that, Bill, go ahead and unmute and take it away.
Thank you for reminding me to unmute. This is the book with Pith across this, as you will see. And Jane and I will be reading from that. Mainly, I will be reading. The first poem is called Pith, as it should be. You will find it in the snake, the fish, mosquito, and lowly wiggling worm. The sycamore, its leaf, or a foal wet with birth, struggling to its feet. Invisible, but it's there. A ghost felt, yes, heard, yes, dreamed, yes. I was in a meadow, dreaming, and all around me I saw it, while hearing, yes, yes, yes. And the next poem selected is on page 15, right, Jane?
Yeah. Yeah.
And this one will be read by Jane.
Margarita Monkey. Long ago, when we were monkeys in the trees, why did he not leave well enough alone? From limb to limb, the air, the legs and leaps, the viva yo. But hey, it led us to this. 75 miles an hour on the freeway, or spanning a continent in a few hours. The moon was next, and now to Mars. The zoom of computers came in a day. We paint, compose, and dance. Like bees, we buzz in pollen up to our knees, believing through it all, we're never gonna die. Still, I wonder about my monkey life, sitting on a branch, my back against the trunk, sipping my margarita and the blue sky over it all. I, the monkey, talks with I, the me. Would you change your life for mine? In the end, say I to me, when it's over, we're all the same.
Well done. All right, the next poem I will read. It's about my late brother named Jim. Jim died today. Jim, my brother, you died today. A bundle of a man lying on a bed. Oh, Jim, are you there? How heavy my heart is with you. I remember you as a bear of a man, and yes, as an eagle finding sky. A lone man possessed by something. Your reach was far and high. Did you find it, Jim? I wanted to help. You gave to me so much. Here, Jim, take all that I can give. Most of all, Jim, it was love, wasn't it? I feel now your love for me. I hope you knew my love for you, even as your curtain closed. Here, Jim, some more love under the curtain, but I cannot reach you now. Death has claimed you away, and no power ever known can reach me to you. This, my heart, mortal and body worn, will cup you as long as I have life. And surely now it's this, I to you. My thanks, you lived here. Now the next poem will be read by Jane.
Music, is that the one?
That's the one.
Yeah. Entitled Music. Where does it dwell? An opera aria or spellbinding symphony or a ballad some ages old? The throat, the heart, or maybe the brain, chest, guts, or the whole of you. Even if the soul does not exist, it's there, hovering, in that place that says yes to existence, where music dwells.
Thank you. The next poem is in a category I'll call word poems. Telecusa. Bonacenda leta foe. Flora clutching ought to know. Cetaphili telecusa telerusa. Telerusa nate alarm. Letaphona rest and harm. Native finder telecusa. Native finder, native finder. Whosoever telerusa, nada ever telecusa. Nada tele God Almighty, pity finder, God Almighty. We forever row and tow, woeful woe ever know, deserts blowing, bitter mind, telecusa, telerusa. And Jane, the next one is by you.
A celebration of Henry. Henry, you have a full name, but only a part of the stuff that most of us have for the journey that helps our passage down the earthly path of living. But the giant part that brought you, pardon me, but the giant part that you brought with you is a claim to love. Your mother, father, grandparents, and others, all whose hearts are warmed by the special slant of life that was made for you. Henry, in your lying down, your gaze is through the ceiling into the heavens so that you feel the bright bonds from all who love you. Henry, Henry, you and we share as one that deep secret of life.
The next one I will read, entitled Why Go. O many mo miny might flew the rook, not Terra, not Luna, not Una. O round such time as ends and overs, O cross the null a leaping, O through the zoom a flume from ever, where end and again twin circle so sadly. Why go, Mo, so miny to any? Lux and Larn o'ercome the stickers, and vision as misty as monsoons weeping, soon creeping to coffin is kinder. All mourns a sun, and darks a twinkle, and greens so furious it dies a being. Why go, Mo, when staying's so sticking? Never have you seen such always nothing. Great suns are quenched by simply not being. Go on round where Lucifer faltered. Breeze past God's old nursery nook. End is so lost, and time's no longer. Go on, Mo, and mine be with you. And the next one is yours. What I heard.
What I heard. Writing about the tweeting of an unseen bird in a nearby tree is not the same as hearing the tweet. While gloaming along the path beside the creek, flowing without a murmur on a warm February day, the sun, in the company of oaks and cedars, gray moss dripping from limbs, laying shadows like iron webs on the face of the earth. From a little throat, a moment, a tuneful, unspellable sound. In my quiet world today, the tweeting of that lone bird may not be what saved my life, but made my life worth saying.
The next poem I will read Title is Somewhere the End. I came upon an old man, he was crying. I asked him, is it because you're dying? This is what to me he told. No, he said, it's because I'm old. But the life you've lived, I see was good. Had your choices, did what you could. Sometimes good, sometimes sad. Now I'm old, my body's turned bad. But you see sunshine, you hear rain. Your mind is sound, thoughts are sane. We are born, live, grow old, die. A mystery so quick, never know why. Now see I why you cry. Is there room for more?
Yeah, we've definitely got a few minutes if you have any other poems you'd like to share.
All right, this one is entitled All We Are. Among the stars we are gathered on our turning globe. It comes to this, our lonely sitting stools. Now all we are is running as water from our palms. We clench our useless fists to clutch ourselves. We drain into the past that looms dark and dead. We are caught in the guilt of life, the space of past and dead, out beyond the edge of all our star-sprinkled limits of vision and further, as the voice of full-blown self speaks relentlessly at the bitter blank of time and space. Gather us then, O holy murderous time that runs through our house and hearts like smells of death astride a wind, feeling the openness of our doors. Now then, gather us like petals clinging to our flower and tell us a passing word of beauty and who we are and what beyond the blazing sky we may hope to drown into, and whether, if there be soul, will it fling itself aloft like a bird loosened from gravity, or will it clutch the bones of our daily cares, the only cares we have known, as but dusting teapots on cloudy afternoons, or paying dues of 3 cents more than just, and mothers sleeping in our milky bones, and fathers beating their heads against our coffin walls, and we the fumbling introduction they were striving for. Or if the soul, alas, is a part of us, and falls at death in the same dark hole, and flees at death along the alleys that wind endlessly across forever, and if, when we die, it is the soul that dies, and if, in fact, our bones come clean, and when the marrow is gone, there's no soul to be seen, and if, in fact, we are temporal things that strut and fake and shout despair and sit and hold to a tearless pose, then let us rest and take a pause and loose our hands and watch time flow away from us. So I think that's it.
Great. Thank you so much to both Bill and Jane. I just want to say, I mean, the chat is already mentioning this, but really the topics that you broach with your poetry, there's just so much for the reader, in this case, the listener, to ponder. And I really love that you shared that with us today. So at this point, we do have time for our audience Q&A. So if anyone in the audience has a question for one or both of our authors, or authors, if you have questions for each other, go ahead and type those in the chat and I'll make sure they get asked. We have already received a couple of questions, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. But as our Q&A is going, feel free to be posing more questions in the chat. So this first question, this is for both of you. This person wants to know, what are your poetic writing rituals / processes? Rebecca, I know you kind of talked about this at the beginning already a little bit, but I'm wondering if you could start us off with this one. Any other details you want to share?
Thank you. Okay, so the question, what are writing rituals? Yeah, so for this particular collection of sestinas, I really did a whole yogic sadhana to like intentionally come up with these 6 end words. And it was really a process of self-discovery. So I did write a sestina every day, and not all of them were good at all. Like I just had to trash a lot of things that didn't make it into the collection, or it's just like too embarrassing to share that stuff. So yeah, I don't know. Part of the ritual is trashing a lot of stuff, like writing a lot, like writing constantly. And even when you're not writing, you're writing when you get into this kind of groove of writing. Just write every day, write all the time, you know, think of something, some line, write it down, have pen and paper handy. You know, aside from a very formal sadhana, like what I did with the whole candles and incense lit, and, you know, go through a whole, you know, body, somatic practice, mindfulness, meditation, those things are good. I mean, I just, you know, before I read, we even did like a moment, 1 minute of just breathing, and then, you know, start your thing. So I don't know, Bill, what about you? What are your rituals?
I don't know. I've often wondered, as a matter of fact, one time, you may know the late Tony Hoagland, poet who taught at University of Houston, won some prizes, a good poet. One day we were walking around the museum, not really together, but at the same exhibit in Houston. And I said to Tony, why do we write poems? And he bounced it back and said, I don't know, Bill, why? So we wandered around a little more, and I came back to him and I said, Tony, it's because we cannot not. So that's my answer. It's just something that bubbles up like a spring of water or something. Just it happens to me. I don't know. I never set out deliberately to be a poet, and I did not undertake it until my 20s, roughly, maybe 20. And it's just something in life that began to happen to me, and I don't have any deeper explanation.
Yeah, sometimes it's as simple as that, right? We just gotta write. So this is kind of a similar question for both of you. So I want to touch on this one next. This is from Brian for both of you. How do you prepare for when you're about to write? Maybe creating your setup, or just how do you get into that groove? Going back to you, Bill, any thoughts on that?
Prepare. I don't prepare. The poem finds me. I do not find the poem. Now that's probably literally true. It's something that just begins to happen, and I begin to feel it as though something's coming over me. I have the image, I have the feeling of what it is I want to. For example, the one about my brother Jim, you can see that something would move me, that I thought about him, and I was affected by that, and I simply wanted to speak to it. I have 6 siblings, and all of them are dead except one, and each one of them, there's been a poem, because when Nancy dies, it invades me, and I've got to do something. And if I can say to her or say about her some of my feelings, then we call that a poem. Or if the sun is setting, you can write a poem because the sun is setting.
Yeah, I love that. I've not heard it just so simple as that. I think that makes it feel so much more understandable for people even. Rebecca, how about you? Any other details about how you prepare for when you're just about to get writing?
Well, I really love what William said. Pardon the barking. So I resonate with that really well because it's like this ineffable thing of, you know, you just have this strong feeling or this strong pull, or you just have to write this down. You just have to express. You know, a lot of things are happening internally, especially the emotional upheaval that might be happening. Yeah, when you see a beautiful sunset, you know, and you just feel a sense of like you took in this sunset, and then what's a way to express and expand. And I think it's just a natural feeling like I just have to say this, or I have to share this, or yeah, when you know you don't know what words to say, but you really want to say something. So I would just kind of echo what Bill said. I thought that he put it really well.
Yeah, totally agree. So this is a question now for both of you from Colin. What poets inspire you or have influenced your work? Bill, do you want to start us off with this one?
Oh, it's hard to say. Of course, I will name some of the well-known poets, although my poets tend to come from a zone of my life a little earlier than right now. If I look around and say, who are the poets today who are on stage? I am not sure I'm familiar with that, but I am familiar with T.S. Eliot, Yeats, Sylvia Plath, on and on.
Dylan Thomas.
Dylan Thomas. Thank you, Jane, because Dylan Thomas is a great poet, and he's the best reader of poetry who ever was born.
Yeah, totally. I can see so much of that, even just having been familiar with your work. And I'm sure as people check out this book, of course, I'm sure that'll sort of show through some things as well. Rebecca, what about you? Any poets that inspired or influenced your work?
Yeah, so first I want to shout out Tanya Proputniewicz's name because she taught this April Poetry Month challenge through the San Diego Writers Inc. And I took her class, and it really started me on this journey with Sestinas. So that's one poet who's living and who's a local poet to me and a friend of mine now. And then many poets, Allen Ginsberg, Gary Snyder, Walt Whitman, Emily Dickinson. I know Virginia Woolf's not considered a poet, but her book, The Waves, it probably launched me into this realm of loving poetry. And yeah, I would say Victoria Chang, Patricia Smith, there's so many to name. Yusef Komunyakaa. There's so many. I would love to name them all. They're just, you know, I read poetry all the time, and I just love it. So yeah, thank you for the question, Colin.
Yeah, I mean, it's really the more inspirations, the better, in my opinion. So I love that. This is now a question for both of you from Brian. Did you have a passion for writing early on in your life, or maybe did it come about later? Going back to you, Rebecca, how is that, or when did the passion for writing start?
Yeah, so probably the passion for writing, where I really just had to write, didn't start until I was in college, and I was kind of forced to write a lot, and I just started to fall in love with it. But I had been writing since I was a kid, like little stories that I would try to like give to my teacher to show them. Like I would write stories about my stuffed toys, or in school I would pass notes with my friends that were like essays. I mean, there were long notes. I would share these notebooks and exchange them with my close friends. And we had whole worlds going on in there that were a lot of fun. So yeah, it started early on. I think I've just always had this longing to write. I've even tried, I consider it an addiction. I've tried to get rid of it because the yogi in me doesn't want to write, doesn't need to do that, but there's more in me than that. So yeah. How about you, Bill?
Well, you pretty well said my story. I did not write as a youngster, and even in college, I did not take to it. I didn't take any courses that focused on poetry. After that law school, for some reason, it began to happen. I don't really know why, but I was busy in law school, but occasionally I would write a poem. And then that blossomed to being more than occasional. So I would take time, I would step aside. This began to happen. I would step aside when I had to, as I described earlier. And again, I sort of had to. And I did, like you, one time I tried to stop writing poetry because I was very busy in my professional life. And I was sending poetry off to magazines at that time. I quit that later. So I thought, I don't want to spend my time. I don't have time for this. But I couldn't stop. And I was not able to stop even for 6 months. And that's been, I write a lot less now. Somehow I think it's like I was trying to get something out, and maybe I got it out already.
Yeah,
that's-
it's just this need to write. Sorry, go ahead, Jane.
I was just going to say, that's a wonderful comment and an amazing one too. That, yeah, I was turning over everything in my mind, and maybe there are many fewer things now left to turn over. That's a great comment, Bill.
Yeah, definitely. It's like the poetry is just, you're not even trying and it's coming out. So we now have a question for Rebecca. This is from Jane. Did your ritual process help you come to terms with your yoga experience and being a ghostwriter for that crooked yogi?
Yeah. So definitely this process was a way for me to process that literally. And when I worked as a ghostwriter, there were just some things that happened to me, the way I was treated and mistreated. And I had to process all of that, and as a ghostwriter, you don't like reveal who your clients were, and you don't, you just kind of keep it all under wraps. So there's a way I had to process it. And it's similar to Bill's process with, like, you just have these things you have to say, but you can't, there's no other way to say them, but get them out on paper so that you know what you're thinking. At least that's what it was like for me. So yeah, that certainly helped. It helped. I'm definitely in a different place I was before writing these poems. They changed me, and this process changed me, and it was for a good, it was a good kind of change.
Yeah,
Thanks for the
definitely.
question.
Thank you for sharing your answer. Okay, so I'm seeing, looks like the Q&A is slowing down, but there is one more question, at least for both of you. What are you planning to do next as writers? Bill, do you want to start us off with this one?
Oh, yes, that's easy. I'm going to write the best poem I've ever written in my life. I don't, as I said, I have already said, I don't write as many poems as I used to. And I think, as you would expect, over time, my poems improved. So I have the opportunity that maybe I can write a good poem even yet.
Best is yet to come.
Yeah, I think that's a great perspective to have on it. I mean, why would you ever start write or stop writing then? And Rebecca, do you want to close us out with your next plans as a writer?
Yeah, again, I just want to echo Bill. I think that's a great way to put it. Like, I'm just going to write my best thing next, right? Today. Um, yeah, we'll see what kind of comes. It's like that. It just kind of hits you like lightning, or it doesn't. And it's fine if it doesn't, but I don't know. And then I could just say, oh, I would love to write all kinds of things, like a thriller or a mystery, or yeah, I just we'll see where the wind blows me, I guess.
Yeah,
Thanks for the
totally.
question.
Yeah, of course. And thank you again to both of you for your answers. And I just want to say thank you in general for just being generous with us today, and sharing these poems with us. It's always such a intimate and interesting experience, really, to hear poets read their own work. So thank you to both Rebecca and to Bill for being with us today. Thank you, of course, also to everyone in the audience for helping us celebrate these wonderful authors. And don't forget that you can order She Bleeds Sestinas and Pith from the links in the chat. So I'll drop those in right now. And please also consider checking out.
Ayla,
I'm
I want
sorry.
to thank you. I want to thank you very much.
Oh,
Contributed a lot. Thank you.
of course, I'm happy to be here. Like I said, I mean, really just hearing authors and poets read aloud, it always makes my day. So thank you, truly. So please, if you're in the audience, consider checking out atmospherepress.com to browse our new and forthcoming releases. You can also sign up for our email newsletter, and in that newsletter, you can hear about more events like this one, and you can submit a book manuscript of your own on our website. Submit your work to books@atmospherepress.com and let us know that you attended today's event. So we'll look forward to hearing from you. And other than that, that's it. So have a great close to your weekend, everyone, and we'll see you at the next one.